Wow, nice crisp opening there, Chris Bellin.
That was committed. I was committed to that opening.
You were committed. It was really committed, like biting into a crisp, juicy apple. Both of us went apple picking this weekend.
Right.
Yeah, I was up in Massachusetts visiting my dear friend Jim, and we were at Lookout Farms in Natick. And it was just Natick. I don't know how to say it. Anyways, it was a great time. It was a beautiful day. I had a whole bunch of apples, and I'm looking out there for lower sugar recipes that I could make for an apple pie, an apple crisp. If you have a fabulous gluten-free low sugar recipe for any of those things, send them over. We got Pete Nelson in the chat. Hey, Pete. Excited to see him out there. But Chris, where did you go apple picking?
We're gonna see Pete Nelson next month. Our in-person open mic.
I know, it's so exciting.
I went apple picking. We took a bunch of kids to Bethel, Connecticut.
Nice.
And went picking some apples. And I don't know what kind of apples do you like to munch on.
Oh my goodness! I like almost any kind of apple. I like more on the tart side than on the sweet side of things.
Yeah.
I think that's very fun, and it's very fun to combine those. To bake with those apples, but also to have them a little peanut butter, a little almond butter, or just for a little snack. I also love the little baby apples. I love picking them when they're just like little. They're just a few bites. It's.
You like those ones you bite in, and then you're like,
yeah, it's like a sour candy. But not too sour. They can every once in a while you get one that's like.
I like those too. There were plenty of apples today. And,
nice.
We had a groovy time, and there's the cider. I can't really do the cider. Does a number on me.
Chris, I was gonna say, yeah, the hard cider has been all right, but if I don't do it exactly right, we're gonna have a situation. Not to gross anyone out or anything.
All right.
I think we just got a thumbs up for that. Yes.
Mom and Dad are in the house. Hi, Mom and Dad.
Mom and Dad are in the house. Mom has a vote for Gala apples. Nice.
Gala apples, very tasty.
Very tasty indeed.
Those Macoun apples.
Macoun, Jonah Gold, Cortland.
Oh, yeah, they're all good.
Macintosh, Red Delicious. Yeah.
They're all good. They're all in one a day,
Yeah.
Keeps that proctologist away.
Oh my God. I tend not to have as much trouble with the apples if I put them in a baked good, but that's not good for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mom just said, don't need a laxative with apple cider. That is the truth, Mom. That is
I can see the direction this evening's reading is going.
We need to pull it back from the
downhill fast. Going right down the toilet. Let's get out of here.
No, we need to transition. But Chris, what are you drinking this evening? What beer do we have today?
I think it's the same one I had last week because that's what I had left. Two as in TWO from our friends over at Two Roads Brewery.
Nice.
In Stratford, right? That's where they are. Stratford, Connecticut.
Two Roads is so nice. It's really fun over there. We should have a meetup there one day, peeps.
We should. I've not been. So.
You've never been?
I've been to Stratford, but I have not been to Two Roads.
Oh, you have to, Chris. You'd love it. It's great. It's a great time down there.
Maybe we can get our friend Steve Otvanaski to come by.
Yeah, our Stratford peeps. We have people over there, and that's not super far from New Haven. Maybe Larry can come out. Brad, we've got Connecticut. We've got Connecticut writers tonight.
That's right.
Very exciting, very exciting. Anyways, it is 8 o'clock, so it is time for us to give our official welcome to FUMFA 109. Wild. Every number over 100 is exciting, extra exciting to me, and we're so excited to welcome this evening Brad Davis and Larry Bloom. It's going to be an awesome night of readings, welcoming Brad Davis for the first time and Larry Bloom returning to us. Larry was also a mentor in the Fairfield University MFA program, so we go back quite a ways. So it's really a pleasure to welcome both of them this evening. But Chris, what else do we have coming up real soon?
Well, I'm excited to say that on Friday we have our live in-person, open mic. This will be our, which one is this? Third or fourth?
This is our
It's all a blur.
fifth. We started in July.
July.
Fourth. I'm sorry.
Oh, God. It's this Friday, 7:30 at Eco Evolution. That's in South Norwalk, right down there on the main drag of South Norwalk, Washington Street. 135, I believe, Washington Street.
Yeah.
And that is always a groovy time.
So much fun.
We have a lot of fun. We have some great folks, including our friend Yana Opidi from the MFA program. We got Nicole Caruso Garcia. We've got our friend Charles Rafferty from Newtown. He's going to be down there, and comedian Frank Vera. There's going to be comedy. There's going to be poetry. There's going to be prose. There's going to be music. It's going to be a little bit of everything. So come on down. It's Friday, 14th.
Come on down. And you can see we're posting all over social media about it. You can get information on the address. Follow us on social media. Follow Eco Evolution on social media. Click our link to sign up or just to let us know that you'll be in attendance. But please do sign up if you have any music or writing that you'd like to share, storytelling, comedy, anything you'd like to share, or just come and spend the evening with us. It's going to be awesome. And it's also going to be like the day after my birthday. So,
so bring a gift. Checks are accepted. But
it would be terrible if you didn't come and see me right after my birthday. So
that's
come
right.
on, just like no guilt.
It'll be amazing. And then let's say, then 2 weeks from tonight, then we're going to be back here, and we have Musab Abu Toha, who is he at Yale?
Oh no, he was, I believe, a poet in residence at Harvard, in 2020 or 20.
It was one of those.
I'm so sorry. I need to make
a New Haven connection, but it was Harvard, I guess.
Yeah.
That's going to be amazing, along with Kalani Pickard, who's author of this amazing novel about Ukraine. It came out last year, and so she's got a lot to say about that situation. And that's going to be a really interesting night. And then the week after that is Spooky Night. Open mic. If you're interested in Spooky Night and reading a spooky story, a spooky poem, or a spooky whatever, essay, I don't know. You can please get in touch with us. That's on the 30th, and that's always a lot of fun. I think it's probably our third annual Spooky Night, right?
Oh my God, yeah! It's our third annual Spooky Night.
It's a thing now. Once you do it 3 times, it's real.
It is a thing, and bring all your Halloween snacks, dress up in your costumes. We'll have a really fun, spooky time. So please, watch for that, RSVP. And if you'd like to read, please reach out to us, send us a message. We'll have, more information about that popping up, but please do let us know. We want to have you read. Anyways, Chris, all this great stuff coming up, all this great stuff happening. It's a wonderful autumn. Autumn is just full of great stuff this year, and I feel like it's our first autumn in a little bit where we're not as worried as we were about the COVID situation, which is a big blessing.
Yeah, well, fingers crossed.
Yeah. I mean, let's not get crazy.
Let's keep going. Everybody.
Stay safe. Be careful.
Keep your germs to yourself. It's fine. Just, and we'll all be good. We'll all be good.
Yes, that sounds good, Chris. Well, without further ado, we need to jump into our readings for the evening. And we're so excited to kick off the evening with Brad Davis. Welcome, Brad.
There he is.
Hello, everyone. Yes.
How are you doing this evening, Brad?
I'm enjoying the pre-show very much.
You are.
Oh, thank you.
We've got some good chem going on.
Thank you. Well, Chris and I always have a good time. But that's so sweet, Brad. Thank you so much. All right, I'm going to introduce you with your bio. Brad Davis, MFA, Vermont College of Fine Arts, is a California-born Canadian. Yes.
That's right.
Living in northeastern Connecticut. He is author of 9 collections, most recently Trespassing on the Mount of Olives. Individual poems have appeared in such venues as Poetry Magazine, Paris Review, Michigan Quarterly, Spiritus, JAMA, Brilliant Corners, Image, Connecticut Review, Connecticut River Review, Here, and several anthologies, including Waking Up to the Earth, Connecticut Poets in a Time of Global Climate Crisis. This past July, Brad was the Edwin Way Teal Writer-in-Residence at Trail Woods in Hampton, Connecticut. His awards include an AWP Intro Journal Award, Sunken Garden Poetry Prize, and second place in the Presence 2022 Sacred Poetry Contest. He was also the founding editor of 2 poetry journals, Broken Bridge Review and Theodate. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. And lead editor for the anthology Sunken Garden Poetry 1992 to 2011. Excited to hear you, Brad. Take it away.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chris and Katie. It's really a pleasure to be reading with Larry tonight. We were co-conspirators in the Sunken Garden Poetry event. Larry as a co-founder, and I came along later to work on the anthology. But it's wonderful how that's worked out, that we get to be co-features this evening. What I'm going to do tonight is read from 3 of my books, but I think of it as kind of a Berryman sandwich. The poet who really set me on a path to integrating poetry and theology, which is my other vocational stream, was John Berryman. At the end of his book, Love and Fame, he has 11 addresses to the Lord. There's a long story there behind those addresses, but I found them in a used bookstore on Martha's Vineyard, and reading them, I suddenly felt like there was a path forward for me to integrate those 2 parts of my life. I'm going to be reading a poem of his from those 11 addresses at the beginning, and then another one at the end. So here's the first, and it is in fact the first of the 11 addresses. And these are numbered, but by John Berryman. Master of beauty, craftsman of the snowflake, inimitable contriver, endower of earth so gorgeous and different from the boring moon, thank you for such as it is my gift. I have made up a morning prayer to you, containing with precision everything that most matters. According to thy will, the thing begins. It took me off and on 2 days. It does not aim at eloquence. You have come to my rescue again and again in my impassible, sometimes despairing years. You have allowed my brilliant friends to destroy themselves, and I am still here, severely damaged, but functioning. Unknowable as I am unknown to my guinea pigs, how can I love you? I only as far as gratitude and awe confidently and absolutely go. I have no idea whether we live again. It doesn't seem likely from either the scientific or the philosophical point of view, but certainly all things are possible to you. And I believe as fixedly in the resurrection appearances to Peter and to Paul as I believe I sit in this blue chair. only that may have been a special case to establish their initiatory faith. Whatever your end may be, accept my amazement. May I stand until death forever at attention for any your least instruction or enlightenment. I even feel sure you will assist me again, master of insight and beauty. There are those who say that these aren't his best poems, and his love songs or dream songs are, of course, magisterial. But I found those 11 poems life-giving. It was like, okay, here's a way forward for you to bring things together. So what I'm going to proceed with is reading from 3 of my books. The first being Opening King David, which are poems in conversation with the Psalms, the biblical Psalms. And there's one poem for each of the Psalms. I'm going to be reading a poem entitled Waiting. It was inspired while reading the 48th Psalm. Waiting. With no enduring city here, no homestead or ancestral cemetery to ground a sense of belonging, what reaches in to shape a vision is beauty. Hey, it's everywhere, not only in lakes and flower gardens, but peeking over a Kmart facade and slanting off parking lot puddles. Compositions abound, planned or haphazard, that leak the news. Yes, here too beauty tabernacles among us. The way an abandoned shopping cart points to the white Salvation Army donation bin, and beyond, toward a stand of trees hung with crows that crowds the lot's perimeter. Salvation. Now there's a beautiful rumor, that I may trade in my load of moral pain, my fear of being found out and shamed, and right away recover a bit of what I most want to see more of, the beauty of holiness. Here, stationed solo on the paved crown of this hill, parked and waiting for my family, I follow the crows' jerky line of flight as they rise up from their rain-darkened perches and set out for nowhere in particular. This next poem happened as I was reading in Psalm 112. For me, this series was a way of responding to the sacred texts that I grew up listening to week after week as an Episcopalian kid. Enduring, sometimes enjoying the liturgy. And I felt in the early 2000 aughts that I needed to have at those Psalms and allow them to find resonance. So here in this Psalm, there was a phrase, good will come to him who is generous. I would say good will come to all who are generous. This is a poem that is for a generous man, a generous poet named Drum Hadley. He was a cowboy poet, but more than that, he was also part of that New York scene back in the 1950s. And he generously hosted us at his place in Cooperstown, New York. This is called In Cooperstown. He wants to show me before nightfall something to take with me into sleep. So we walk upstream, up the laddered notch behind a high-minded bird dog released from a firm heel. Here, at his family's old summer place, the names of things have become for him harder to recall. Neckerchief, cellar stairs, corkscrew, the most simple chores more difficult to perform. Later, by the fire, he will say he'd also love to show me the canyons of the borderlands, where Spanish dagger blooms on the ridgelines, and he trusts his cutting horse to remember what he cannot. But here, along this narrow creek, that conversation waits until he has sent me ahead to crest the next steep rise, wade a shallow bend in the stream, and step into Cooper's Gorge alone. There, beyond his call or whistle, mist blackens the south wall's rock face, and yellow leaves collect the day's last light, hold on through dark, 1,000 thin lanterns suspending around my head. Two poems from my book, Still Working It Out. These poems bounce back and forth between Connecticut and New York. New York largely because our son lives there with his wife. Connecticut for obvious reasons. Here I am. This is a New York poem entitled The Exhibit. Over on Lexington, in the glassy foyer of St. Peter's Lutheran, 4 Fujimura paintings. The largest, a 2-panel sea of blues and greens with, faintly, a fruited quince emerging or disappearing, like the entire New York skyline in the holiday blizzard we stepped back into early that afternoon, threading our way home around abandoned taxis, pushing through the best of the storm's wind-blown drifts down each unplowed block of the graying city. No more than 10 souls in sight, all boots and mittens, scarves and hats. And finally, above the intersection we call ours, maybe 30 pigeons playing mid-air, like children or bundled tongues of flame, not quite ready to complete their ecstatic descent. If I could, I'd paint it, the appearance of the likeness of the glory of the Lord, after late Turner. No borders, no date, no discernible time of day. Only the relative coordinates, West 51st Street at 9th Avenue. Though really, it could be almost anywhere. The poems in this book are more a general collection of poems that were published in a number of sources. And this next poem, I'm not even sure, I can't remember where it was published, but it's one I love. It's dedicated to 2 very dear friends here in the quiet corner of Connecticut, Paul and Judy Smith. It's titled For the Dog that they put down. It's entitled Toby, and I had some fun with this. I hope you enjoy it. Toby. In a hole in the orchard where your family buries pets, you bury Toby, stuffed in a black, biodegradable plastic bag. Unable to tell his golden head from tail, and unwilling to frisk the shapeless package to locate his snout, You stoop and center the slimy tennis ball atop the bag. You want him, when he wakes, to smell your scent on the ball before bounding off who knows where or with whom. Now you feel Egyptian, thinking Toby needs more than a ball for the journey, needs rawhide shoes, bowls full of his favorite canned food, that ratty old blanket, and yes, an attendant, maybe one of your pretty daughters, to wake him and make sure he's happy there. But the ball must suffice. So after laying a broad flagstone shelf atop shapeless Toby and the ball, you refill the hole, finishing off your ancestral work in the close company of past pets and early evening's feral stillness. One of the influences in my writing recently, well, it wasn't an influence so much as it was a discovery, which helped clarify an influence. I was searching the internet for something, perhaps researching Thomas Transtromer, when I came upon an interview he did in 1973, in which he was responding to people who were taking issue or having issues with the appearance of some religious language in his poetry. In his response, he said this: I see a kind of meaning in being present, in using reality, in experiencing it, and making something of it. Being present to all of what is here, what is within, what is without, what is mysterious, using reality. In other words, receiving what's there, not just sort of being present with it, but receiving what's there. And what's out there, what's in there, what's in here, there's mystery, there's the idea of divinity or of God. There is religions of God and not God. And that's all part of the reality that we bump our noses against day in and day out, either happily or unhappily. And so for him, there was meaning in being present, in using that, in receiving that, and then experiencing, not just sort of keeping it safely at bay, but allowing himself to feel the reality that's there, to enter that reality, and then having experienced it, then to make something of it. And that's really I think, a good summary of how I approach my work. And I'm going to read two poems now from the most recent book, Trespassing on the Mount of Olives. And it is me sort of coming to grips with some of those religious themes, realities that are both outside and within me. This first one is a fairly long poem. It's entitled Man with Water Jar. 1. If you look carefully in the painting's lower left quarter, just inside the Essene gate of the old city, you can make out a man cradling a child-sized water jar. Milling about him are several women, their jars balanced on their shoulders or heads. The street teems with commerce and red-caped Roman soldiers and all manner of priestly comings and goings to and from the temple courts. An ordinary day in the city of peace, except there's that man and 2 travelers entering the city who will follow the jar to a house and a room upstairs in the house where they will see to it that all is ready. 2. What does the man cradling the water jar know of the teacher? Given a need for secrecy, he would not have heard the teacher instruct the women to tell the homeowner to prepare his upper room for Pesach. Likely, all the man knows is nothing more than where to stand and how to hold the jar, and to be watching for 2 Galileans who will enter the city as though looking for someone. Likely, the man is indentured or enslaved, reliable as the homeowner is trustworthy, and wants nothing more than to discharge this duty and return to his own family by nightfall. 3. Form fitted to function, class, and proximity to source. Whether hewn stone or shaped clay, stitched hide or banded wood, long before ascending from the earth of domesticity into the paradise of metaphor, the water jar enabled entire civilizations their rise and prospering. So we are all indebted to what and whoever delivers us our daily dur, ura, ama, vatn, nero, y, thuk, av, aiga, amazi, glo, woda, water. 4. But fetching the water was a servant woman's work, a manservant's to receive it from her and distribute as instructed. Was there shame in being a man standing with a water jar near a principal gate of the holy nation's royal city? May we assume, and why not, the manservant suffered his ordeal for a benefit sufficient to buoy him through that long afternoon, something inscrutable unfolding. 5. They are the stories unnamed who move me. The man with water jar, his wife waiting up for him, each with faith enough to do the next thing and hope that perhaps their sparrow-like lives won't count for nothing. Since without them, their kind, there is no story, no reason for the story in the first place. I'll close not with a Berryman poem, but with this last poem in my trespassing book. It is the title poem, and it has an epigraph. Mount Olive. A 19-year-old was arrested on trespassing charges over the weekend when he entered a house without permission and fell asleep on the couch. He was released on his own recognizance and has a pending court appearance. I found that online at newjersey.com, nj.com. I don't know how I how I found it, but there it was. And it made me think about, obviously, Mount Olive, the Mount of Olives. So trespassing on the Mount of Olives. The young man claimed he thought it was a friend's house. Inebriation, no surprise, having scrambled his familiar world. There was no malice intended, no evidence of a forced entry, no resistance in the morning when the homeowner arranged for an officer to escort the lad courteously to a squad car. Though I have never awakened on a strange couch in a stranger's house, I did wake up into sentience in the early 60s, thinking, where am I? And what am I doing? Though I have never been to Mount Olive, New Jersey, I have spent years of my reading life on the Mount of Olives, trespassing, looking for a brown-skinned teacher I never met growing up in white, post-war Episcopalian America. A rough street level itinerant, he recalibrated the good life, lavishing crazy affection on outcasts, the immoral, and others like me, and pitched his camp in that grove where it's rumored he sweat blood and suffered betrayal, and when swords were drawn to defend him, parried sharply, "Enough of that." This morning in Connecticut, I again ascended the mount, wondering, where is he? And what on earth am I doing here? Wanting more than anything to stay alive a little longer, long enough to see our son joyful, our marriage more than you or I could have imagined, my own court appearance pending. Thank you. That's what I got.
Brad, oh my gosh, you got me all misty on that last one. Oh, I love it. Oh my gosh, I love it so much.
I think all poets should be checking the New Jersey News.
I have no idea where that came from.
Because who knows what kind of beautiful poems that they'll come up with.
Oh my God, Brad, I mean, first of all, just what a beautiful reading and such beautiful insight into not only your writing but to your spirituality and the way that you're weaving through that. I thought it was so beautifully introduced, and it was so wonderful to hear all of your poems and how even in the ones that aren't explicitly religious, there's such an attentiveness to the moment and that being present, like you said, that everyone can experience, whether it's tied to religion or not.
Oh, yeah.
I just thought it was so beautiful, especially this last poem and the way that that it was really kind of inspired by that hilarious news story and just so incredibly moving. Oh, Chris, I'm going to keep gushing. Oh, it got me so
mad. Spirituality, Toby the dog, even, I mean, it oozes with spirituality.
Yeah.
And I love this idea of writing poems in series of poems in conversation with the Psalms or or whatever.
Yeah.
I think that's such a fascinating idea. But they were wonderful, and your introductions were great too, and very
thank you.
Very, very, very grounding, and really just kind of helping us to kind of appreciate your world and thinking about these poems. Really wonderful. And I write some spiritual poetry too, so these different Bible stories, these ways into poems, these moments that you're witnessing and juxtaposing with biblical moments, and your thoughts about those moments, very personal to me as well. So I mean, not only are they just moving in and of themselves, but I mean, so resonant with anyone who is thinking and writing about these things. Really, Brad, is awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And we're going to see Brad in the Q&A. So everybody grab your questions, formulate those questions, get them ready for later, because we have another reader this evening. Thank you, Brad. We're so excited to welcome our next reader, Larry Bloom.
And then Luca in the background.
And yeah, my co-author is there.
Your co-author.
Luca, he's tired out from his last public appearance. I don't know if he'll be adding much to this.
Larry, that's too funny. How are you doing this weekend?
Very well. And I just wanted to say what an honor it is to be in this with Brad, who was so generous. He let me borrow his CV so that it appears to be my own. And the Sunken Garden has been such a great thing for us.
Yes.
And so I'm reminded every time I hear what a poet has to offer. Thank you, Brad, for that. I have.
Hold on, Larry.
Yes.
We're going to read your bio.
We have an event.
Just read Brad's. That's fine.
we have all these fabulous real life connections between Larry and Brad in their various travels and experiences.
We want people to realize that. So I'm going to read your bio before you get going anywhere. By the way, Pete Nelson from Fairfield University MFA program says, "Hi, Larry." So, but first, let me read your bio here, and then I want everybody to notice. Those of you who are skeptical that owners and dogs don't look alike, just
Chris, Bill.
Gemelli in Italian.
look at that.
Twins.
The likeness is incredible. Larry Bloom is the author or co-author of many books, many books, including the biography Saul LeWitt, A Life of Ideas. Also, The Writer Within, Larry Bloom's Connecticut Notebook, Letters from Nuremberg with Christopher J. Dodd, not Todd, The Ignorant Maestro with Ite Talgam, wow, and The Test of Our Times with Tom Ridge. He has taught at Yale, Fairfield University in the MFA program, of course, FUMFA, Trinity College, and Wesleyan. He is also a freelance book editor. He was editor-in-chief of Northeast, the Hartford Courant Sunday magazine, for 20 years, 81 to 01, and previously edited Miami Herald's Tropic magazine. He's co-founder of the Sunken Garden Poetry Festival and many other public projects. His plays, that's right, he's also a playwright, include Worth Avenue, Wild Black Yonder, and the musical A Woman of a Certain Age. As a freelance book editor, he has brought many volumes to publication. He's a recipient of a Lifetime Achievement Award from the Connecticut Center for the Book, and his latest is called I'll Take New Haven.
I love it.
Tales of Discovery and Rejuvenation. And there's going to be a book launch October 24th, and we're going to put this in the chat. People can see it. October 24th, RJ Julia Bookstore. That's in Madison, Connecticut. I always want to say Raul Julia. It's RJ Julia Bookstore in Madison. That's the 24th. That's at 6 p.m. We're going to put a link in the chat so people can do that. And we're also going to put, Larry has said if anybody wants to email him for a book, to let him know. So we're going to put
in the
chat. And anyway, that's it, Larry. So you can take it away. It's all yours now.
Excited to hear you, Larry.
Thank you. That concludes my reading tonight. Thank you. So I'll start with the reason for the book, and so it's included in this section, the first thing in the book, which is a brief word about longevity, and it begins with a quote from one of my mentors, Isaac Bashevis Singer, who wrote short stories and novels. He said, "I believe in free will. I have no choice." So that begins the book. And then this brief introduction. When my wife, Suzanne, and I decided in 2015 to move from the tranquil countryside to urban chaos and culture, friends were surprised, and so were we. We had vowed never to leave our barn house in the woods of Chester, home for 3 decades. The town has barely 4,000 residents, with a village center of old world charm, small shop commerce, and an air of affability. In a way, it's a mystical place, even willing to laugh at itself. Its semi-official slogan, Chester, Connecticut, we know where it is. So news of our flight from this tiny brigadoon astonished more than a few locals. New Haven? Really? We love it for its theater and music and art and, of course, the pizza. But what about the high city taxes and gunshots in the night? And most weren't even aware of another Elm City distinction. Selection in 2016 by Condé Nast Traveler as one of the 10 unfriendliest cities in America. Hence, we presumed, should we slip on the sidewalk ice, a distinct possibility considering our senior citizen status, a majority of witnesses would simply step over us. Nevertheless, in our resolve to add ourselves to the city's climbing census count, 134,023 in 2020, we were far from alone. Many people who've reached retirement age inhabit these old streets, drawn by satisfactions untallied by magazine list makers whose research favors police blotters, city budgets, and stereotypes over the more difficult task of assessing quality of life. On these pages, I have taken the trouble, because I have no choice, of documenting the results of exurb to city adventure. Every time I have a religious experience having nothing to do with theism, but a kind of movement of the soul, there is a tale to write. The yarns that follow trace how I became content in this place of urban complexities, rewards, heartbreak, and delight. Some of it is born out of the perils of aging, but these findings are relevant for younger people, just about everyone I meet these days, because they contain useful lessons drawn from decades of personal experience, observation, failure, sources of exaltation. In short, what matters in the true end when life itself turns fragile. In these days of ours, we may have no choice about free will, but we have options aplenty about almost everything else. So I think I'll take you from here to that fragile part. This is a piece called "I Gotta Have Heart." You remember, before I break out in song from Damn Yankees, "I Gotta Have Heart" is a little takeoff on that. It began with a blackout and collapse, yet that chilling event may have saved my life. What follows here, a tale of bodily intimacies, is meant as a guide for the reader and a revelation that some medical miracles have lately become routine. The story began on a late summer day in 2018. It had been brutally hot and humid. I walked to a market on Orange Street, dragging myself home, lugging cartons of 2% and almond milk. "Take a bath," suggested Suzanne. "It'll help." And so I did. I remember how calming it felt in the tub. What I didn't remember to do at the time was to keep the bathroom door open a crack so that the air could circulate. I stood up after 20 minutes soaking to grab for the towel. A little while later, I woke up in the prone position. For a moment, I felt a measure of comfort, welcoming the coolness of the bathroom tiles, but then thought, well, this isn't right. A negotiation ensued. Suzanne was eager to call 911. I assured her I was okay. I just needed rest. She exacted a promise for me to call our primary care physician first thing in the morning. Next day, I earned an immediate appointment. Sue offered to drive me. I insisted she stay home. It was a 25-minute trip from New Haven to Westbrook, and I was sure I could manage it. This bullheadedness is evidence that sanity is a casualty in a health crisis. Soon, the next day, the journey, however, proved uneventful. However, my normally amusing primary care physician, who said that I had been fermenting nicely in old age, was shocked that I had driven myself. Soon, I'm sorry. Yeah, he didn't wait for an answer. He called an ambulance to take me to New Haven Hospital's emergency room in Guilford. What does one think of during his first ride ever with the EMTs? Is it too cold in here? What are all these machines? How will my wife get the car in Westbrook? Is my day of reckoning here? Are my underpants clean? The Guilford experience was a blur. Within a few minutes, I was back in a moving clinic on a hospital's main campus in New Haven. Cardiac unit, I heard. They wheeled me into a room. Cardiac unit. Nobody in my family had ever been wheeled into such a place. My ancestors were burdened by cancer, not heart troubles. Soon, an attendant physician indicated the issue at hand was unrelated. You may have suffered from dehydration. However, the specialist said, we need to take some tests to be sure. These, I learned, included an echocardiogram. It revealed, alas, that the period of fermenting nicely had ended. I developed a condition called aortic stenosis. Specifically, my primary heart valve was no longer operating properly. Hence, my blood wasn't reliably reaching its destination, though at that point, the condition was judged to be mild and moderate. 3 summers later, though, after my collapse, tests showed that mild to moderate had progressed to severe, just one stop from critical. The following week, I met the surgeon in charge of my case. He introduced himself as Mike. Gee, I thought, I don't need a Mike. I need a cardiac specialist. I need a whiz. I knew what Dr. Michael Clemens was doing, putting me at ease. In a way, I was already there. Rather than panic, I felt blessed. At the age of 77, I was way ahead of the game, living in an agreeable neighborhood in New Haven with the woman I love, drawing strength from our combined families and the achievements of our combined 4 children and 8 grandchildren, compiling a permanent record, largely without prominent scandal or crushing failure. I had done things I had never thought possible, including learning to speak Italian well enough to avoid being arrested for impersonating a bilingual traveler, pursuing my love of theater by writing plays and lyrics for a musical, written enough books to lose track of how many, and teaching at Yale. Even the idea that Suzanne and I had a third member of the family, little Luca, our Italian pooch, provided comfort. More than that, I was a beneficiary of contemporary medical developments. I didn't need open heart surgery to replace the valve. I could take advantage of the much less invasive procedure through arteries in the groin, technically known as TAVR. Groundbreaking method, less than 20 years old, but so common at 20 York Street that in the last 2 decades, thousands of men and women have experienced it. When I met with one of the surgeons on the cardiac team, she explained all this as well as the possible upside. You will likely have more energy afterwards. She also reported that the new valve would either be crafted from tissue from a pig or a cow, and asked, do you have a preference? I said, the preference is to delegate such delicate decisions to those with expertise. However, if you choose a pig option, please don't tell my rabbi. Such medical authorities explain the risks involved with surgery, including stroke and worse. As websites say, you may experience death. That, of course, would be an unfortunate experience. I waved them aside. The percentages of failed procedures are minimal. Besides, this was not a case of elective surgery. Preliminary tests were required, a CT scan, a stress test, which succeeded in giving me considerable stress as my blood pressure yo-yoed, and an angiogram in which I was introduced to the idea of slit arteries. And then the big day, July 20th, 2021 at 7 a.m. Wheeled into the OR, I saw a team of at least 6 assembled, along with so much medical equipment that I gasped, all that just for me? The last thing I remember was when the anesthetic, propofol, sent me off into lovely land. When I woke up in post-op, my kind nurse, Dee, who had just started her 12-hour shift, revealed that all went well. Her kindness and expertise were needed for many hours. Her workday was almost over before the hospital found a free room in the cardiac ward. During the time and later, a parade passed through, intent on examining my incisions. Mind if I check your groin? Doctors asked one after another. In my lingering haze, I heard the same question again and again from other physicians, as well as practical nurses, registered nurses, assistants to nurses, technicians, custodians, cooks, flower shop customers, accountants, and the New Haven Symphony. And I checked your groin. I'm sure you're asking right now, okay, so the important part of the 2-day, 1-night vacation went well, so how was the food? For lunch, I ordered, well, my answer is Yale New Haven has excellent doctors and nurses who know what they're doing. The kitchen, I don't rate it among the top 20 in our fair city. For lunch, I ordered a grilled cheese, vegetable soup, and a fresh fruit cup. This arrived 45 minutes later in the form of dried chicken breasts and salt-free chicken soup. I've never seen that happen before, testified Dee. Hours later, taking pity on me, she smuggled in a warm blueberry muffin. That night, finally ensconced in room 16 in the cardiac floor, I couldn't sleep, read, or even watch TV. Naps came in 15-minute increments. In a period of consciousness, I overheard my new nurse talking in the hallway to a colleague. Every morning when I get home, she greets me with, "Good morning," and "I love you." And her colleague remarked, "That's amazing considering how young she is." When the nurse came into my room to carry out yet another groin check, my 33rd of the night, I asked her about what I presumed was her precocious toddler. "No," she said, "it's not a child. It's my dog who says that." Well, I thought this must be the anesthetic doing cartwheels in my brain. But I thought of little Luca, who, during his 8 months of life with us to that point, had not yet even once inquired, "Well, master, how do you feel today?" Next afternoon, after an echocardiogram confirmed my new valve is living to expectations, I was released, exhausted but relieved. Lucky this time. I was the beneficiary of fate, irony, medical advancement, and a platoon of caring and skilled professionals. 2 weeks later, I learned that my new valve is kosher, made from cow cells. And that is, I think there was maybe an ending to that, but Suzanne and Luca were comforting, though the latter had been lax at proper nursing care. Still, I'm happy to see Luca barking at life as if it will last forever. And I will read one more here, which is, some of you have been, I think, in your life, if you haven't been able to avoid it, the Harvard-Yale game. Suzanne and I went to the game, sort of. And it came up with a piece called "Something Perhaps About the Game," which has been going on for something like 150 years, but never with me present. If you missed the big shindig at the Yale Bowl in November 2021, an afternoon of near perfect football weather, you avoided a crowd of about 40,000 people to see the Crimson and Sons of Eli take the field for the 137th time. So did we, almost. I mistakenly thought it would be possible, given that we had paid 2 months in advance for reserved seats and parking, to arrive near kickoff. No problem. It soon seemed to us, however, that every car and SUV lately manufactured in Detroit, Sweden, Italy, Germany, Japan, Korea, and Tennessee were ahead of us on the way to the west side of New Haven, all of them trying to turn left at one traffic light. Though the first quarter had slipped by already, we had the advantage of inspecting some impressive fall flora in the fields near the old bowl as we waited for the light to change again and again and again. Apparently, nature does very well without fretting over the Ivy League standings. We asked 2 traffic directors for the route to parking lot D. The first said, 1 left and 3 rights, which 25 minutes later brought us back to where we started. The second said 3 lefts, which it turned out was an excellent plan because 50 minutes later, after the bumper-to-bumper sojourn into West Haven and back, we reached a spot in parking lot D at 1:46 p.m., nearly 2 hours after the game began. Suzanne, however, reminded me, look, the only part of this game that really matters is the last 5 minutes. I didn't know it at the moment, but her gridiron wisdom would be confirmed. At this time, she received a text from a friend who had been on the faculty of both schools involved in the day's fracas. It said, "Go Harvard" or "Yale." That seemed to sum up the day. I had been a stranger to the game. Hmm. No. At the beginning of the third quarter, the scoreboard to our left indicated that Harvard led by 3 points. This was much less of a disappointment to me than missing the performance by the two marching bands, which I suspected had prepared something topical and satirical for the occasion. But I should at this point offer a thought or two about the actual action on the field, even though many around us were talking of other things, such as the stock market, international affairs, the shocking news out of Wisconsin of the Kyle Rittenhouse trial. As far as I could tell, number 12 for our side, the quarterback, found himself in a state of duress, as if he had no offensive line to protect him. And on the Harvard side, they wore amusing yellow pants. But that's enough expert commentary for the moment. The game was already past 2 p.m. and we were very hungry. I went out to see if on request I could find a kielbasa for Suzanne and perhaps a nice veggie sandwich for myself, considering I was in the last stages of cardiac rehab and I didn't want to get a stink eye from the nutritionist. But when I arrived at the main refreshment stand, there were long lines, long, unmoving lines. It was as if each customer, once reaching the promised land of the counter, in addition to receiving refreshment, had reserved 50 minutes of psychiatric counseling. But here's where my fortunes took a turn. Two young women behind me, chatty and clearly very bright, were exchanging ideas on how perhaps to find a way to interpret exactly why there was no line movement. We got to talking, of course, and I learned they were third-year law students. And one of them, a researcher extraordinaire, had done menu reconnaissance and reported out that no kielbasa or kale were available. In our time waiting, they asked me questions about myself, which is odd in a Yale setting. That is, in such places, the usual conversation among strangers involve an impressive gushing of self-reference without once uttering, "Tell me something about yourself." These young women were actually interested in learning about other people. Perhaps I should have guessed then that the revelation that came next. They informed me they couldn't comfortably reveal, given the circumstances, exactly where they go to law school. But hint, hint, it's not New Haven. They had arrived on a chartered bus from Cambridge. And these two bright, compassionate young people were aware at this point that my desire to fetch whatever food was available and get to Portal 17 outweighed my wish to stand in line until the spring thaw. So one of them said, "Tell us what you'd like and we'll bring it to you." What? I thought. This is a twist. Two daughters of John Harvard demonstrating mercy to a Yale lecturer. I took out my wallet and give her some cash, but they refused to take it. As one explained after she saw the message on my hat, Vietnam veteran, that it's the least we can do for you as you've done so much for us. She took a photo of my seat selection and said, "We'll do our best." I told Suzanne this remarkable story when I returned and saw the scoreboard that each team had scored a touchdown and that Harvard was still 3 points up, so I hadn't missed anything. Number 12 for our side was still getting harassed to the point of Geneva Convention violations when he tried to pass. And number 19, the QB for the foul side, wasn't faring much better. This concludes the part of the tale meant to dispense definitive play-by-play commentary, except that evading his pursuers, number 12 heaved a long pass down the right sideline to a fleet fellow in blue who caught the ball and ran to the end zone. Our side was ahead with only a few minutes to go. Bulldog, bulldog, bow, wow, wow. At this point, the two Harvard law students arrived at row 11 looking for us. They had food, and once again, I pulled out my wallet to send a $20 bill down the road, but they shook their heads and passed 2 hot dogs and a large bottle of Coke, the original kind, which I last drank probably in 1986. It tasted great. And so too the hot dogs, which we had read recently in the New York Times would take 36 minutes off of each of our lives. Worth it. The football gods must have noticed this act of Harvard charity. They rewarded the Crimson with a last-minute touchdown and therefore the game. But as we exited the bowl, we saw not a single tear shed in the departing crowd. It was as if they had barely noticed. We drove home. We found our car in parking lot D and drove home. Amazingly, it seemed as if every car driven from Korea or Japan or Sweden or Italy had already departed for foreign shores. The ride home across town to East Rock was swell, and we congratulated ourselves on a sparkling, if not entirely winning, adventure. And that is my account of the game.
Larry, I absolutely love it. Oh my God, it's too funny. Larry, we love you. Okay, not only is there just this incredible realness and authenticity, vulnerability, and just, it's just so good to spend time with you in your voice and in your stories, but we just love the humor. We love, and especially because we're Connecticut people here, we're loving all the Connecticut references. And I know that one traffic light near the Yale Bowl. Why is it like that?
Larry, all I have is one question. Can I check your groin?
That was too good, Larry.
As far as I could tell, it wasn't really much to see.
That's too funny. It's too funny.
A couple of the doctors were about 12 years old.
Yeah.
Larry, you crack us up, Larry. You're just awesome.
What can I say? It's just the way it is. Anyway, well, thank you. And I guess
we love it.
There are some serious parts of the book, but I can't think of what they are.
Yeah.
Listen, everybody needs to get.
There are, but you always have your sense of humor laced throughout, even through the serious parts. I would say your heart condition was on the serious side, but it was still very funny.
and so real and so authentic, and it's so wonderful to live in these challenging or frustrating or traumatic and very difficult moments, but to also see them through your eyes and see your humor in the midst of it, and see your observation of people and their kindnesses. Just love it. Absolutely love it, Larry.
Well, the two students, the law students from Harvard, what a twist. That's one of the things that, if you just sit and watch a football game, you miss the human element.
That's right. you gotta go get those concessions.
You gotta go to the hot dog stand to find that.
And have your people moment. No, but Larry, I absolutely love that. Well, we need to bring up Brad again and give another round of applause to both of our esteemed readers this evening, Brad Davis and Larry Bloom. Both of you, just such an incredible evening of reading so far. And both of you have just participated in such a richness throughout your entire writing lives. And it's just awesome to get to dwell with you in that for these few moments. But everyone, get your questions in the chat. We're going to start off with our famous first question. Chris Melvin.
I'm not the famous first question, but I will.
No. But it's your moment.
We'll start with Brad. Well, it's a very simple question. Not that it's a small question, but it's the question is how has writing, being a writer, changed your life?
It's been a part of my life since high school. So I think where it changed was there's this quartet that came out in the 60s called the Beatles. I don't know if you've heard of it. I was smitten by them, and especially when their lyrics, when they started to develop their own lyrics. Rubber Soul in particular, it was an album that affected me deeply because they were writing their own stuff. I wanted to write. They made me want to write my own stuff, and of course there was Joni Mitchell and Bob Dylan and the Beach Boys, and just an incredible explosion of individuals and bands that were making their own stuff. They weren't just rehashing what came before.
Right.
I mean, I love jazz, but that so much of jazz is like cover music. They're just covering the old tunes, but then they're improvising and taking it further. But I loved what was going on then in that very, very difficult decade. And I think the big differences it made is that at first I wanted to be a singer-songwriter, be in a band and a rock star. And then by the end of the decade, I just wanted to make poems.
Love it.
And that's been what I've been trying to do ever since.
Kind of like Katie.
Oh, I wouldn't, yeah, well, yes. I absolutely. That so resonates with me, Brad, being so inspired by music, hoping to write lyrics. And just when I got into, like you were saying, truly writing from myself with my own voice, in the same way that you were inspired by these musicians, that it became something just incredible for me, that it was just such an expression of who I was, and is something I always want to do, whether or not I ever, right, continue in a musical direction. I do hope to, but that it's become its own precious way of, expressing myself, expressing my voice, and right, observing the world. I love it.
Yeah.
Brad, it was the Beatles, and Joni Mitchell, and Katie, it's Metallica.
Oh, well, I'm about to go see Smashing Pumpkins, and it really inspired me.
Good choice.
She's into
Thank you.
Into the grunge. She's into the grunge.
I am. Oh, I have such a kind of a wide variety. I'm into everything from classical music to Smashing Pumpkins to even the electronic music. Anything that that sort of touches a nerve. I like that. But we need to pass this question to Larry.
What was the something about Iron Maiden?
You guys are too funny.
I knew you were a Maiden fan, Larry.
Larry.
I don't know. Never mind.
No, you're good.
Writing, Larry. Writing.
What was the question?
Well, we know writing has changed your life. I know we who knows when you started writing, probably as a young man, but how has it changed your life being a writer versus whatever else you might have been?
No, I've just been reading White's essays, E.B. White's essays, and he says in there, a writer of essays is somebody who thinks that whatever comes into his head is of interest to everyone else in the world. It's a little bit humbling, but it really is. When I mention the idea of having of being moved, if I'm moved, I think it's incumbent upon me to try to figure out why and how, and then try to recreate that in a way. Yes, the essays of E.B. White. Yeah, and I just reread The Death of a Pig, and I thought, in which he says, why does the death of a pig always occur at the same time when guests are arriving for a dinner party?
Oh my God.
So I don't remember what the question is, but I hope that I think I think that we had no choice but to write. Those of us who knew early on that this was,
Yes.
even if we had nothing to say, but never
That it
stopped
was
me.
it was
Yeah,
an
right.
urge and an inclination that you had to honor, and that was something that was something important. So while you remain kind
Right.
of humble, you also have this faith that, this is a calling, something that I need to do, and you're kind of very vulnerably and authentically putting yourself out there, and it does end up resonating, even though, of course, as Evie White says,
Well, even the misfortune is, I say, for civilians, misfortune is lamentable. For writers, misfortune is tax deductible.
that's too good. It's true.
Very, very a theme in your book. You have several themes in your book that I can pick up, but one of them is your insatiable curiosity with people, and you're asking you comment often. People aren't always open to being asked questions, but you do it anyway. And I did that come first, or did
Yeah, yeah.
writing essays come first, and you learned how to do that?
You wouldn't believe this, but I was a shy person. Uh, and but I don't know if you noticed this, but how many people come up to you in a day's time or a week's time or a month's time and ask about important questions in your life,
Mm,
what you're doing, and so forth? In other words, how curious are they about you,
Yes, never.
and how curious are you about them? It seems to me we have a lot to learn
that's right.
when we go outside of our own shell, and you have to stick. I mean, one of Suzanne's common comments about me is, you're not going to speak to that 4-year-old on the sidewalk, are you?
That's so sweet.
And of course I am, and my grandchildren say the same thing. You can't, you're going to get in trouble. You're going to get arrested.
You're talking to everybody.
It depends what you ask.
I'm sure, Brad, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, in the first of all, I didn't think you were trespassing on the Mount of Olives, because you actually belonged there.
That's
And,
right.
and but I'm sure you understand that you have to figure out, you have to be curious about other people.
That's right. Curious about other people, and interested to kind of dig into these stories, and despite people's reluctance to maybe ask questions or seek these questions, when we all read and hear work that gets into these details of our lives, it resonates, and it's just awesome. We have a question in the chat for Brad from Mary Catherine Harper, one of our guests a few weeks back. Hey, Mary Catherine. So Mary Catherine writes, for Brad, how easy or difficult is it for you to capture the substance of your experience of divinity in poetry?
Oh, it's so easy. I think that for me, it's not so much capturing the substance as dancing around the substance. In other words, I think the substance of divinity is essentially ineffable. And so it's how do I clothe the intuition, clothe the sort of spiritual apprehension in language, in imagery, that hopefully will provoke a reader to have their own experience of mystery, of the possibility of transcendence.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that's I really resonate with that, Brad, because in my own sort of spiritual writing, or writing where it's influenced by a spiritual mindset, in being present and observing the world, that it does come so easily, because it's kind of like this tugging urge to to observe, to capture that observation, to connect it to other things, and that's probably some of my most free flowing inspiration. I find myself really able to write quite easily at that. I mean, the editing process is another thing, but
Yeah, for me, the challenge, the difficult part is to um, obviously to avoid cliche. There's so much rubbish. I'll use the word. I mean, schlock, maudlin kind of religious stuff that goes on, and it doesn't strike me as authentic.
Mm,
And so how do I, the challenge, the difficult part of it is again, it's dancing away from that and towards something that perhaps you discover sort of how to get at the subject by exploring.
yes,
If I sort of paraphrasing Eliot there a little bit.
yes.
Um,
I love that. I love that. I think there's such authenticity in what both of you are doing in these different ways. Of course, like avoiding the cliche is one thing, but I think if you're staying in that authenticity, in that urge that's drawing you to write and sticking to that, then you're definitely going to find something resonant. Larry, I have to ask you, how did you first conceive of this wonderful collection that is so rooted in New Haven and its imagery, its people, its wonderful things? How did it first come to you that you wanted to make this collection of essays happen?
This is an accidental book. It is really, because you have these grand plans for big things. The last book was the Sol LeWitt biography,
LeWitt, yeah.
which took 10 years, 11 years actually,
Whew.
off of my life.
Larry.
And this one, when we moved to New Haven, I started writing these occasional essays for Paul Bass at the New Haven Independent.
Nice.
And last year, at some point, we had lunch. We have an annual lunch, and I said I'd like to write a book about life in New Haven. He said, "You already have." And so it was, it was just a question of collecting them, adding to them.
That's right.
Updating them, and trying to figure out what the book was. And it seemed to me, because it is an oddity. I mean, my parents, when they retired, moved to Florida in a gated community, and where you had to, if you were under 55, you got arrested. And the only kids were there by accident, or
Yes.
you had to have a visa or something.
Another item.
But I found that the great thing here, one of the previous owner of our condo here said that on Halloween, so we pretend we're timely here, and you've got the show coming up in 2 weeks on Halloween. On Halloween, the United Nations will show up at your door, and I didn't believe that. So we only bought 500 pieces of candy.
Oh my God.
And we were out by 6:15.
Oh my God.
The people from all over the world seemed to come to the door. There was not only princesses and ninjas and ballet dancers and all this stuff, but people spoke many languages, and
I love it.
kids came through the door and sat down at the piano and played, and national anthems and whatever else.
I love it.
And this was the thing. It was it's so exciting. So much juice going on around here.
Yeah.
And I think that in order to, I think one of the real questions about aging is, one of the real answers, I think, is the idea of never stopping to never quitting the effort to learn something new every day.
I love it.
And I think that that's ultimately what drove the book.
I love it. I absolutely love it. Absolutely love it, Larry.
The New Haven Chamber of Commerce should, I think, just have a big stack of these to hand people, because you read it and I'm thinking, all right, maybe I need to move to
Maybe I need to move to New Haven.
Yeah, I'm getting a cut from all of the real estate.
Yeah,
Getting a cut.
I hope so.
So you should. That's so great, Larry. Brad, I wanted to also ask you, as someone, myself, who has written poems inspired by biblical narratives or moments in life that I'm making these connections to, do you kind of set out with a collection or a manuscript or a series of poems that you want to write, where you're like, I want to focus specifically maybe on this biblical narrative or on this item of inspiration and kind of explore it? Or is it more like episodic, like these different moments and thoughts come to you and you kind of take it like that and build the collection later? How does it typically work?
Well, for these two, the opening King David and Trespassing on the Mount of Olives, they were projects that I set out
Nice.
to accomplish. Both projects occurred to me as I was facing a transition in my life. The first one was I was transitioning out of being a chaplain in a boarding school to being just a creative writing teacher in a boarding school. And I wanted a discipline that would be a bridge project between one way of being at the school to another way of being at the school.
I love that.
And then the Psalms, it occurred to me, gave me 3 years. That's 3 years of material if you
there you go.
a poem a week.
Yeah.
And then the Trespassing book, I was facing retirement from boarding school altogether, having spent 30 plus years doing dorm work and library duty and eating with kids and all that jazz, as well as teaching them and coaching them and whatnot. I thought I've done a Hebrew scripture. I think I want to do a Christian scripture.
Mm-hmm.
And so the decision there was I could do a slow read of the Gospels, the four Gospels, and just see what happened, see what poems. That was more sort of, it was disciplined, but it was more improvisational in a way, or occasional.
Right, like what hits you as you're reading through this, rather than like Psalm 1, 2.
Exactly. Yes, the Psalm 1 was very structured. Draft a poem a week. The Gospels was more open-ended and occasional, as you say.
I like that. I really like that, Brad. That's so that is so cool. And I'm so inspired and excited by spiritual writing and the different ways in which we organize that and make that happen. That's great. Larry, I have a serious question and then kind of a fun question for you before we get to our last question. Larry, I have to ask you. You've done so many fabulous different kinds of multi-genre, awesome stuff. But I really want to ask you about teaching, and what have you loved about being a creative writing teacher and guiding people through their essays and memoirs, etc. And then the funny question tagged onto that is Pepe's, Sally's. What is your New Haven pizza choice?
Oh boy, that's a tough one. This is permanent, right? Because you said this is going to be on forever. I mean, right? People could look it up.
Yes, I don't want to cause any controversy.
If I say the wrong thing, if I get the wrong place.
Well, if I say Pepe's, you can say Sal's, and we got it covered.
Okay, yeah.
Now wait a minute. There's also there
are others.
There are others too. And, anyway, before I get myself thrown in jail here.
Okay, I take that question back. I take it back.
There is a statute in New Haven that you can't. You have to. Never mind. What was the question?
Oh, sorry. Okay, I'll ask you the serious question again.
Yeah.
What has been, what have you loved? What have you taken away from your experience?
I think Brad, you probably want to weigh in this too, because I find a burst of energy. It's so intense to teach. When we were on Ender's Island, that was
Yes.
a lot of stuff happening there, but some of it useful.
Occasionally.
But it is intense and time consuming, but then it also is inspiring, because as a teacher you also learn. This Yale experience has been this book that you have been so kind to promote tonight, is really got its final push while I was teaching undergrads at Yale, because I was demanding a lot from them, and I thought, I can't do that unless I do it for myself too.
I love that.
And otherwise, I'm just a chalk covered professor with.
No, you've got a lot of cred, Larry. You've got plenty of cred.
Well, it's a great thing to teach. I think it's a privilege to teach, and I was thinking a lot about the teachers in my life that have affected me,
Absolutely.
and who have inspired me, and I don't know where any of us would be without them. I think they're so
true.
Yeah.
True.
And for the pizza, I'm going to say, aside from the three big ones, all of which are very good, there's also Zanelli's.
Okay.
Which is a shop run by Albanians, but Albanians who speak about 62 languages.
Yeah.
Wow.
And Rawa, which is run by is owned by an Iraqi
Cool.
a fellow who also has a restaurant in Manhattan, and run by a fellow from Syria. It's
Love it.
excellent pizza. It's not traditional New Haven pizza. I'm already getting myself in big trouble.
Okay, Larry, we'll cut you off right there.
There's others too, so I don't.
We love all the pizzas equally. I shouldn't have even asked.
Also, I'm going to get in trouble with my cardiologist, because
You're not supposed to know the answer to this question. No.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, I have no idea.
That's so funny. Brad, Brad, any words on teaching before we get to our final question?
Well, what I loved about teaching at the boarding school, I did some adjunct stuff at Holy Cross and also at Eastern Connecticut State. And what I liked best about the high school age is they don't know yet the power of their language. What language can do. Most of the students I taught at the college level had already had some encouragement in creative writing. They'd already been told they were pretty good and they should do that.
Yeah.
But in high school, they're just discovering what they can do with language. And for me, it was such a joy to help midwife their love for language and doing cool stuff with it.
Love it. Love that, Brad.
I miss the kids.
Well, we definitely hear you. We understand, and we love to hear that about that teaching experience and how inspiring it is. Brad, Chris Belden, hit him with that famous last double question.
All right, Larry, it's a two-part question. One is just a pearl of wisdom. Pearl of wisdom for speaking of teaching. Pearl of wisdom for the youngsters out there who are considering writing. Maybe in your case, who are coming up, they're thinking about writing essays. I don't know. Give them a little pearl of wisdom, and then a book recommendation.
Yeah.
Something.
Well, the thing is, what I always say to people is that the screen. What used to be a notebook, but the screen now is your friend. It's your intimate you can say things to the screen that you can't say to anyone else, and that you don't dare say to anyone else, and then you craft it well enough, you can say it to everyone else, and you have to take it seriously. You have to, And the other thing is a book. Are you talking about a book as an example, or a book on writing?
Any
book you want to recommend?
Oh my God! I've been on the Sinclair Lewis kick for quite a while now.
Okay.
And I'm going to say this is an underappreciated, even though he won a Nobel Prize for literature. People don't appreciate him in the way they should, and so I'm going to suggest books like Dodsworth, Main Street, Babbitt, and Aerosmith.
All right. Yeah, great stuff.
Thank you so much, Larry.
Brad?
Thank you.
Okay. I think that I would just turn back to what Transtromer said, is that be present with the world. Welcome the reality of that world. Experience it. And then make something of it. In the case of writing, we make something of it with words, with language. But if that's not your gig, then make something of it with music, with dance, with clay, with flower arrangement. Make something of it. In terms of a book, the one that comes right to mind is a book of poetry by Jane Kenyon, which has my favorite poem in it, which is "Let Evening Come." Just a fabulous poem of observation, and she's dealing with anticipated grief, and just a remarkable book, a remarkable poem.
I was going to say otherwise.
Oh, otherwise, I think otherwise is it's a selected, and I believe otherwise has "Let Evening Come" in it. The
Hey.
but the book "Let Evening Come," Jane Kenyon, with the title poem, spectacular.
Awesome. We need to thank both of you, Brad Davis and Larry Bloom, for being with us this evening. One more round of applause.
Thank you guys. You guys are
so much.
And congratulations on doing this 109 times.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much to our awesome audience who supports us and tunes in. To both of you, just incredible readings, and just awesome to just dwell with you, get to ask you these fabulous questions. There are so many more questions we could ask, and just so much more we can hear and read from you. Everyone, please go follow and look up Brad and Larry. Go check out all of their great books. Yes, get those books.
There's Luca. Luca's saying goodnight.
There's Luca.
There's Luca. Good night, Luca.
Bacchus is saying good night.
Say
good night, Bacchus.
I absolutely love it. Oh my goodness. What a fantastic evening. Thank you both so much. Thanks to our audience. And we will see you hopefully in person for our Friday night in-person open mic. And then the week after that with Mosa Babutoha and Kalani Pickard. It's going to be awesome. Sounds good. Have a good night, everyone.
Everybody.
Bye, Larry.